All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the course. Let's make this a little bit bigger here. We're going to check these tabs out to see exactly what each of these properties do. So let's get into it. So let's start here. We're not going to be using this one much, really. It's the active tool and workspace settings. It just basically lets you select how you want to select things here in the viewport. And other minor things, don't worry about it. We're not going to be touching this if at all, so do not worry about this one in any case or capacity. But all right, the second one is actually really important. It's called the render properties. If we go into this one, every time we want to create a render, create an image, here is where we select which rendering engine to use, if we're going to use our GPU or our CPU, and basically just mess with all the properties around rendering, how good it looks, and untick or tick certain things to have different behaviors. In rendering, that's where we're going to be doing all that stuff. This one is called output properties, and it's very linked with this one, the render properties. It will tell you your output resolution for your render. So this one right now is at 1080p. It also helps you set your animation duration, and actually this one right here and this one, they're linked. So if I change it here, you can see that it changes down here as well. It's the same thing basically. So there you go. You can render to a region. You can render in 3D, like for actual 3D glasses and stuff. You can change all of those settings that are linked to rendering here in the output properties. Basically, the output properties of the image that you're going to create. So there you go. This one is the view layer properties. Also tightly integrated to rendering. We can select which kind of layers we want to render. This might be a little bit confusing here at first because we haven't gone into this with much detail, but there are different types of things we can enable, like the diffuse pass, the glossy pass, the transmission pass, observer pass, all that stuff. We can mess around with that here. This might be a little bit more complex, but just know that that's where we do it. Basically, every time you render something behind the scenes, it's been divided into different passes, all right? The diffuse pass, the glossy pass, the transmission pass. And here you can enable or disable those when you want to render. So that's where we're going to be doing that if we need to. Scene properties is going to be asking us, all right, well, what's the camera of your scene? If you have any background scene, if you have any active clip, you can change the units you're going to be working with in metric. It could be in imperial. I assume there are a lot of you guys in the US that would like to be working in imperial units, but we are going to be working in metric units. Don't worry, it doesn't really change much. You can change of the units right here. You can enable, disable gravity. Basically, it's what it says. It's the properties of the scene, all right? So we're going to be messing around with this when the time comes. We then have here the world properties. So there's a difference between a scene and a world. So the scene, right? Basically, you have a world, and a world can have a bunch of scenes, basically, all right? So this is the big one. You can change the background of the world, the color of the background. You can put an image there. We're going to learn how to do that. Activate ambient occlusion for your world, another really cool technique for rendering, and other things that apply generally to everything that we're doing, because remember that a world can have a bunch of scenes, all right? So that's the thing. Now we have the object properties. Basically, it's the properties of an object that you have selected in your viewport, and it'll tell you the location of your object, the rotation of your object, the scale of your object. If it has collections, if you can add it to a collection. Remember right here, we're gonna go into more detail with that. If it's visible or not to the camera, or if one of those passes, remember those rendering passes that we've been talking before in here, if you want to enable it or disable it per object, you can do it here in the object properties. All right, custom properties, if you want to add some viewport display, if you want to, in the viewport, if you wanted to enable the shadows, all that good stuff, that's going to be here. The modifier properties. We're going to be coming here a lot in the course. There are a lot of modifiers that can actually change the behavior of what is being rendered on the screen, of the behavior of your actual object on the screen. You can add more vertices, do things with it, you can multiply it. Those things are called modifiers, and we're going to be coming here to learn what they do and how we can apply them. All right, you can modify geometry, you can modify all sorts of things inside of Blender, and this is the way to do it. Basically, you just select an object here in your 3D viewport, and then you select which modifier to apply, and it applies to that object in the viewport. You see that? And then you can delete it. So that's what the modifier here tab is going to be doing. Now this is the particle properties. This is cool as well. Here's where we're going to be creating our grasses, rains, perhaps, I don't know what else. Fur is also going to be here, hair. So that's where we're going to be doing our particle stuff. That's going to be here. We have our physics properties every time we want to generate, collisions, rigid bodies to be able to interact with physical systems and all that stuff, clothing. That's going to be here. Fluids, it's all going to be handled right here. Object constraints, it's basically what the name says. If you want to add a constraint to an object that you have in the 3D viewport, there are plenty. Like you can limit the distance it goes, you can limit the locations it can go to. So you can say like, hey, I don't want this object to go further than 5 units to the right. So that's the way you would do it. And there are a bunch of constraints here. So that's the way to go if you want to use them. Object data properties. Important here is to add vertex groups and shape keys. So vertex groups is if you select the vertices of an object, you can add them as a vertex group to do something else with animation. We will cover obviously this in great detail later, but yeah, we're going to be using this a lot. Essentially just creating a bunch of vertex groups so that they're affected or unaffected by certain forces. That's how we're going to do that. Shape keys for animation, so we can turn an object into another object by creating shape keys. That's the basic idea of this. And a bunch of other stuff that really we don't need, to be honest. Here in the object data, this is what we're going to be using the most. So that's that. And here are the material properties. Here it's where you create your material. So check this out. Because if you have a keen eye, then you might realize I'm going to open up here my timeline, and I'm going to change it to a shader editor. Remember that we saw that before? So now look, that actually my shader editor, this thing right here, is showing the same items that if I go here to the material properties. You see that? See, it has this thing called surface, metallic. Look at it. I can just zoom here so you can see it better. What the hell? There it is, surface, metallic, all that is right here as well and accounted for. So essentially it's the same thing, just like we saw before. We're essentially, if we come here and click here, the shader that we have opened is the one that we can modify here as well. So going to the shader editor and modifying things here is the same that just going here and changing them here. So I can change my color or something to something else, and you can see it changes as well right here. So there are two different ways to doing the same thing. I like to come to the shader editor and change things here instead of coming here, because this gives me more flexibility to add more outputs here and inputs that, well, this one doesn't. But yeah, it's another way to do that. And we have texture properties. Now this was used in previous versions of Blender extensively, but now it's just kind of to the side. You can add basically some properties to your textures if you want to create some height maps for increased resolution and stuff, but we're not going to be doing that here much. Maybe a couple of times. So that is the last one in essence. So I'm just going to return to this, and that is it. Where is it? Animation timeline. So what you just saw, it's basically what you're going to find inside all of these tabs. And with that, we are done. Now you understand the Blender interface. You understand how to shape it to what you like. You understand how to move things around, how to change different windows to something else. What all of this does, well, it kind of does because we haven't gone into it, with great detail. And you can change things around, put it to your liking. If you decide to use the tabs that they provide you, you are very welcome to do so. Each time we're going to do something else. And you're basically done with that. So in the next video, we're actually going to start learning how to move inside the viewport. So I'll see you then, guys.